Comey's top two deputies, his former chief counsel, his former chief of staff, confirming that Comey had authorized the leak of classified information to reporters starting in October of 2016, just before the election, about Donald Trump, about Russia. But there was no penalty. They decided not to bring any charges. And by the way, the decision to make that no charges was during the Trump administration, under Jeff Sessions, under John Durham, under other prosecutors who were involved. An extraordinary story, and one that was originally redacted. When these documents came just a couple weeks ago, this very explosive revelation was redacted out. It was blocked out. Congress didn't know. We pressed, we kept fighting for it, we got the information, and now we have a pretty good sense. And what we know is that when James Baker was caught leaking the information, he told federal agents, he told prosecutors, I leaked it. I leaked it because James Rubicki, my boss, the chief of staff, told me to leak it. And I understood from him that James Comey authorized the leak. And based on that information, neither Baker, neither Rubicki, nor James Comey paid any penalty at all. Now, we talked to the Attorney General just a little bit ago, Pam Bondi. She says that this is an abhorrent behavior by James Comey and his team, and that there has to be a consequence for leaking national secrets and jeopardizing national security, and she intends to bring it. If I'm James Comey's lawyer, I'm not feeling very good about this right now. No. That is the first of many things that have happened today that we're keeping a close eye on. All the details, that document, everything else up on Just the News right now, so go check it out. Amanda, there was a lot of other amazing things that happened today. I would say one of the biggest unravelings of weaponization occurred about 10 o'clock this morning when an appeals court in New York said that $515 million ruling that Letitia James and Judge Edron tried to impose on Donald Trump for the fraud case in New York was unconstitutional. It violated the Eighth Amendment of the Constitution for unfair penalty to an American. That is one of many wins in the courts, but it is resonating all across Washington tonight. And as we speak, Donald Trump's playing a different role tonight. He's kind of on patrol live in Washington, D.C., riding with the D.C. cops. Tell us about that.
Yes, it's so great. So President Trump, I actually have some numbers from the White House. So you had 300 men and women with the DEA, the ATF, the U.S. Marshal Service, the National Guard, and then, of course, D.C. Metropolitan Police and the FBI. Yeah. So President Trump started speaking to them, to what seemed like a very, very receptive crowd, people who are benefiting from the cleaning up of this city. They are, I think, feeling a little bit more liberated to do their jobs, which is making the city just in general have a safer feeling to it.
Have you seen some of the photos where people are like hanging out the window saying hi to the cops and saying thanks for being here, the feds?
Yes. I saw an amazing video yesterday of some young black men, I don't know, probably early teens, maybe mid-teens, who were hanging out with National Guardsmen down near Navy Yard.
Amazing.
And they were allowing these black teens to come and look in the Hummer and just check it out. And it reminded me of, 20, 30 years ago when the relationship between law enforcement and certain communities in this country was very
Back 50 years ago, there was a street cop, and he knew everybody on that street corner and their families, and they would look out to each other.
Your dad?
Donald Trump, my dad, and his family before him. Yeah. I think we had no murders in 7 days here. That's not happened in a long time.
Incredible.
You're seeing hundreds of arrests of the worst guys. You're seeing the feds being welcomed. I mean, it's a really remarkable story.
It is.
And I think it's only begun.
I think absolutely. And, you were talking about the New York case with Letitia James. I think back to what was happening a year ago. As all of President Trump's cases, the prosecutions against him were bouncing across this country.
That's right.
And then you zoom into current day, where President Trump is in the Oval Office, and now he is on patrol live in D.C. I think it's incredible, and I think our next guest is going to have something to say about it, too.
Yeah, it's just amazing. One other thing I just want to quickly touch on. Today, the Trump administration said there's about 55,000 people here on visas that they're going to review to see if they should be expelled based on behavior and other tips that they have. That hasn't happened ever in the history of time. I've been here 35 years. No one's ever bothered to say, maybe some of the people we let in are doing bad things. Let's look at it. Things are changing in a big way. And I have a funny feeling that common sense, people are starting to say, I kind of like what's going on. Even if I don't like Donald Trump, if you're liberal, you're like, I kind of got to admit, I like what's going on. So we'll have to see where we are. Speaking of common sense, our first guest, we had a chance to talk to a little bit ago. He was out traveling, so we got him in before the show. I want you to take a listen to the conversation we had with Tennessee Congressman, and always a man who makes us laugh, Congressman Tim Burchett. All right, joining us now, a man who calls balls and strikes in Washington. There aren't a lot of them. Congressman Tim Burchett from the great state of Tennessee. Sir, good to have you on the show today.
Thank y'all for having me.
All right, there's so much to talk about. Today's a whirlwind day, but I want to start with the revelation we had today because it's one of several that point at a picture. All right, the federal prosecutors had proof that James Comey was behind or authorized classified leaks to his lieutenants, James Rubicki and James Baker as chief counsel, chief of staff. We had similar from a whistleblower inside Adam Schiff's own staff. We've got the prosecutors had evidence that Hillary Clinton had a corruption scheme at her foundation, that she had classified email problems on her server. We can go on and on and on, but it seems like so many bad actors did things that the Justice Department knew were bad, but we never got any punishment. Your thoughts?
Not surprised. The more I'm in Washington, the more I see this kind of stuff. But I mean, the overwhelming significance of the Comey situation to me is beyond belief. I mean, this is, I have to talk to an attorney what the definition of treason is, but at the very least, it's collusion. I think a felony was committed. I think the cover up is in this case maybe even worse than the crime, because you got to ask yourself what else were they covering up, and all those other conspiracies we were told. Who was in on it? Why was this not put out? You know, in Washington, it's such a porous town. You can't keep a secret, and I suspect you get back to some of those in the so-called national media. Were involved in this as well. So yeah, it's huge, and somebody ought to go to jail, and we need to quit. The Republican Party in Congress needs to start going after these people and quit with the 6 months of hearings. Let's just lay the facts out in a press conference. Let the speaker, let the chairman of the committee do it. Quit with all the nonsense. 8 weeks later is too late. Let's nail these jokers to the wall.
Yeah.
So important.
Congressman, I can think of at least 2 Greek philosophers who would say that corruption is just endemic to politics. I would like to think that's not true. At least on Capitol Hill, I think it would be helped by term limits. But for these jobs that are not subject to the jurisdiction of the people through Congress, how do you fix the problem? Do we just have to deal with it? Is it more oversight? What's the solution?
Well, unelected bureaucrats, you're seeing Tulsi Gabbard going after it. She's not waiting on Congress. Everybody wants to. The big thing is, you need to codify this stuff. We need department heads in place with the guts to go after them, which is what Tulsi Gabbard is doing. We need committee chairmen in Congress, Republican elected, going after these people, and they need to fire their dadgum staffs, because that's the problem. You have a big committee that'll have 50 staffers. You can't manage that. That's where the corruption, that is the sewer of Washington, D.C. You multiply that with the Democrats with their 50, it's a nightmare. Nothing ever happens. We're not passing legislation, meaningful legislation. Yes, we passed the big, beautiful bill. We should have been passing others alongside of it. Let's get to work. I'm sick of it. Let's get to work. Let's hold our elected officials accountable and make them do what they say they're doing at the MAGA dinners. Frankly, I'm sick of these things. They get up and preach all this red meat, and they go back to Washington and they send you down the river. And I'm sick of it.
Yeah, and you have stayed true to your word your whole time here. You're serious about what you're doing every day. When I first came to town, I met this wily old senator, had just retired, and he said the 2 things bureaucrats fear most is getting caught and then getting fired. In the last couple of weeks, 2 big numbers have come out. You mentioned Tulsi Gabbard. She's going to reduce the ODNI staff, the intelligence staff, by 40%, save $700 million a year. And President Trump notified the public through the Federal Register this week that by the end of this year, he will have reduced the total number of full-time employees in the federal government by 300,000, 16 or 17%, one of the single largest reduction of federal workforce in the history of our country. Is this maybe the beginning of a real penalty, which is actually just making these deep staters unemployed?
I think it's a start, honestly, John. I think there's more to it. I think we can do a lot more. You're going to find we function without these people, and we'll probably function a lot more efficiently. Let's get into these things. The Department of Education, we need to do away with that whole dadgum department. Send the money to the states. It's not in the Constitution. We were #1 in the world in education when Jimmy Carter formed the Department of Education. Now, trillions of dollars later, we're 22nd to 28th, however you look at it. Look at Washington, D.C. schools, for goodness sakes. The most highest per capita pupil pay there is, the most dollars for every pupil, yet the worst test scores in the country. We need to look at this kind of thing, and we need to extrapolate that out across government. There's so much overlapping in our so-called intelligence community, the CIA, the NSA, the IRS, the FBI. They all got investigative abilities. We need one investigator, and we need to send some people to the House.
Yeah.
Sir, I want to switch over to the business side of things because you're a business owner. I think that California is a cautionary tale for the rest of the country. And we had yesterday the announcement by Bed Bath & Beyond that they are going to reopen physical stores, but not in California. It was a business decision, not political. And it made me think of another California institution, In-N-Out Burger, who's leaving California and going to your state. What is it about Tennessee as far as the business climate that the rest of the country could learn a lesson from? And also Congress, by the way.
Well, look at my beloved Cracker Barrel. Apparently they're going woke. We're going to have a real problem there. And they're we're a Tennessee base. They bring in these out of towners. Yeah, Tennessee, it's a right to work state. We're a low tax state. People want to work. When I was mayor, the beautiful people, they would always bring these businesses in from out of the country, out of the state, and they'd take them downtown and take them to a poetry reading or something. I don't know. Where I'd take them. And then I would take them over to my boys, Alan and Richie, over at Ball Market number 3. Because they had 45 minutes for lunch. They had their names on their shirt. They were greasy, dirty, and they were hardworking. Yes, ma'am, no ma'am kind of people. They'd come in, they would say hello, they would eat their chili dog, and they would get right back to work. Because the biggest asset Tennessee has are its people. It's people. People like Charlie and Joyce Burchett, my mama and daddy who grew up here, fought in the Second World War, didn't want anything in return, just a shot at an equal opportunity. That's what people in Tennessee want, ma'am. And, sir, it is the best people in the world. I can't tell you, I can have the best day in Washington, D.C. President Trump's calling me, the speaker's applauding me, I'm passing legislation. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting a Nobel Peace Prize. And I come home, it's raining, the cable TV's out, the dogs have pooped on the carpet, the donkeys are out, the horses are kicking me in the chest. But you know what? I'm having a better day than I did in Washington, D.C. Because I know I got a wife and a daughter that love me, and I know I'm in the greatest place on God's green earth, and that is Tennessee. So all y'all quit coming here where it's too dadgum crowded. I used to rent U-Haul trucks, and you could never get the big ones. Now you can't. There's too many of them because all y'all are moving here. So, but we love it, and I love the people coming here because they love our values.
They do. It's the land of the free. I vacation there often. I love Tennessee, and it is the land of the free. There's no doubt about it. So I want to ask a little bit about something special that's going to happen tonight. We're going to have On Patrol Live with President Trump. He's going to be patrolling the streets of D.C. In less than a week, this town has changed. We've seen no murders for 7 consecutive days. That's something that never happens in the nation's capital. Hundreds of violent felons taken off the street by the feds in a very short period of time. And neighborhoods greeting the presence of federal cops saying, thank you for making our house safer and our neighborhood safer. How big a moment is it? And does this resonate way beyond the capital to other cities that could be next after D.C.?
I think it does, but I think it shows it behooves them to do it themselves. That needs to happen. You've got the apparatus in place. And look at Washington, D.C. You see a bunch of white liberal protesters from the suburbs coming in. And where are the black folks? They're not protesting. Go on the internet. Look at the videos of them celebrating the freedom. A buddy of mine in the FBI told me one time, he said, Tim, I used to go to church with him. He said, Tim, he said, the best people in the world are in the inner cities, and they're being held hostage by the worst people in the world. They've given those people some freedom, and they're gonna celebrate it, and they do. And I celebrate with them. When Washington D.C. Came to our oversight committee to tell us there was no crime in Washington, at the very same time there was a carjacking right outside, a kid in a Jeep. It was 6 white guys up there telling me this, and all the black folks were sitting behind them. And I said during the thing, I said, why is there only white people up here? I don't see, where are all the people from the neighborhoods, the community? You could see the little old ladies and the men in the background just nodding in approval. Listen, folks, they're being sold a bill of goods. They don't want crime. They want clean streets. They want their kids to be able to walk to school without fear of getting shot. They want a good education. They want an equal opportunity. And the crime and the destruction and the corruption, frankly, that has been integrated into this system has been keeping them down. I think you'll see people excelling after this.
I couldn't agree with you more. I was in a CVS yesterday here in D.C. to pick up something, and the woman in front of me was talking to the clerk saying, it's the first time I felt comfortable sticking my head out of the foxhole in D.C. in a long time. And that meant she felt like she was in a war zone. I just found it such an extraordinary moment. I think you captured the sentiments of the D.C. residents very well, sir. It's a great honor, as always, to have you on the show, sir. We always get a lot of straight talk. Appreciate your time today.
Thank y'all. Hey, and don't forget on September 3rd, Schmooze Fest. It's me and all the media in my office, pizza and cold drinks for lunch.
I'll be there.
All right. That sounds like a downright Tennessee dinner. I'm ready for it. Thank you, sir. Good to have you on today. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, more breaking news right after these messages. Hey, folks, if you're a homeowner like me, you need to listen to this. In today's AI and cyber world, scammers are stealing home titles and your equity is their target. Here's how it works. Criminals forge your signature on one document, use a fake notary stamp, pay a small fee with your county, and boom, just like that, your home title has been transferred out of your name. And that's when the problems begin, because they start taking out loans using your equity and even sell your property. And you're not even going to find out it's happened until you get a collection or foreclosure notice months later. That's a nightmare, right? So when's the last time you checked on your home title? Well, if you're like me, the answer is never, right? You need to do something about that right now. That's why I've partnered with Home Title Lock, so you can find out today if you're already a victim. Use my promo code JTN at HometitleLock.com, and you'll get a free title history report and a free trial of their $1 million triple lock protection. That's 24/7 monitoring of your title, urgent alerts to any changes that might happen, and if fraud does happen, they'll spend up to $1 million to fix it. That's a good deal. Find out why I trust Home Title Lock. Go to HometitleLock.com and use the promo code JTN. That's HometitleLock.com, promo code JTN.
Welcome back, everybody. It seems like every day we here at Just the News are uncovering more and more evidence of corruption and potential wrongdoing from our very own government agencies, especially when it comes to the targeting of President Trump, and in conjunction, the overlooking of potential crimes by those aligned against the president. So whether it comes to the IRS criminal probes that John has been reporting on about the Clinton Foundation that was just suddenly stopped, or the leaking of classified intel by the FBI, the question remains, how did any of this happen in the first place? How did we get to this point? So joining us now to talk about that is former FBI agent as well as a former Navy SEAL and Air Marshal Jonathan Gilliam. Jonathan, welcome back.
Good to be with you all. And thank you for saying former, because I get so much pressure from guys for saying I'm retired from the SEAL teams. They don't like that. I don't like it either. So thank you for saying that. I appreciate it.
Well, Jonathan, I'm glad your name is Jonathan and not James, because it feels like, not to besmirch anyone named James out there, you've got James Comer, James Baker, James Rubicki, all of these Jameses out there who are involved in this scandal that John is talking about from your time at the FBI. When you look at something like this, where the director, his chief of staff, his chief counsel, they are all embroiled in this, yet one is saying, well, he told me, and he told me, and he said, she said, how do you at the end of the day finally find out who is ultimately culpable?
Well, to the side of all the incredible information that John is bringing to the front, right? I have to say that from an FBI investigator standpoint, I just see this investigation unfolding in a different structure than it would be if you and I were the ones committing the crimes, which is further evidence of a two-tier justice system. All of these things that are not just being leaked, but are being reported by Kash Patel, reported by Pam Bondi. Why are these things occurring? Because I can't make sense of this from an investigative standpoint, the way it's being carried out. I can look at what Comey and those individuals did from an investigative standpoint and say, as the information comes out, there is clear evidence that crimes are being committed. That is evident, and especially the more that John puts out there, the more we see, the more Kash and Pam Bondi and everybody else puts out there, the more we see that this is a viable case. So what I cannot understand is, why is this being pushed out into the media? Why isn't this case from the very beginning been held close to the vest? They could have just told the American people, we are working on something that's very big, and then work this like any other case where they have information protection, where they work up and down, not just up to try to get the biggest fish, but to get all the players, because every single person that has been in the FBI or the DOJ or government in general that cooperated with these corruptions or these criminal actions, they're all guilty. And so I think as I go along and I see all these things, I'm torn because I'm looking at it saying, man, this is incredible. The very people that should have been targeted for criminal behavior are now getting targeted. But on the other hand, from an investigative standpoint, I keep stepping back and saying, how can you continue to give the people that are the criminals all the evidence that you have before a case ever comes before a court? That gives them the ability to maneuver, get rid of information. And we have to remember,
Good point.
some of these people are still in the Bureau, most likely, that were used and cooperated, and in the DOJ.
Yeah, that's a great thing. So let me ask you, you said something pretty profound. You think there's a pretty solid criminal case here. And you know, there's statutes of limitations that go all around, but willful knowing leaking of national security information that harms the national interest is a 10-year statute. So if they can prove this leak, they still have a statute. The rest of it looks like they're building a conspiracy case, which is this was a wash, rinse, repeat cycle of protecting Democrats and harming Republicans, violating civil liberties. Do you feel pretty confident that a good prosecutor with a good FBI team and a good strike force probably could charge a lot of people with the body of evidence we now know about?
I have no doubt in that, because I think also what we have to start looking at is things like subversion. You know, subversion, like treason and insurrection, these are all criminal actions that there's law for, but nobody, especially in the higher parts of government, are ever charged with these things. And when you look at those types of crimes, okay, maybe they leaked this information, but was their motive and intent to subvert the government of the United States, or a standing president, or a president that was coming in to office? If that's the case, then the statute of limitations goes out the door. And that's why I believe it's important for them to go forward on a RICO case, because as they link all of these individuals and they can show whether the statute of limitations for those particular crimes have gone, right? Let's say they've passed, but they can show that 2 or more people were involved in these crimes for the purpose of furthering their criminal enterprise. That's a RICO charge. And so when you can show all these people were doing this and the purpose for which they were doing it, if that leads to things like treason, insurrection, subversion, then we are in territory we've never been before, and the statute of limitations, I don't believe will apply, because it supersedes what the actual crime was, and it goes over to the furtherance of a criminal enterprise for the purpose of subversion or treason or so on and so forth. So there's a greater crime that's being committed that all of these individual crimes were being used for. And I think that is where we need to get to, whether we will or not, because of the way the case is being carried out in media and on television for everybody to see. That's a whole nother story, because they're creating a mountain for themselves. The prosecution is creating a mountain that they have to climb that they wouldn't otherwise have to climb. So that's where I think, and let me say one other thing. In order to take those small crimes and show that they were being used for the purpose of things like subversion or insurrection or treason, that is where individuals involved, if they see the direction that the prosecution is going, they can then maneuver their testimony. They can maneuver evidence. Yeah. They've shown us that they're willing to destroy evidence or try in certain circumstances. So that's where my fear comes, is that as this is being played out, then the potential is that they will maneuver to show other than all of these things were being used to further a criminal enterprise.
That's a great point, Jonathan.
Jonathan, before we let you go on a similar topic, a lot of people would argue that one of the symptoms of a morbidly obese government is corruption. And you look at the case of ODNI under Tulsi Gabbard, and she's giving it an Ozempic shot, and as a result, it's going to go down a few dress sizes. Does that help send a message to those who would politicize an agency like National Intelligence, the FBI, a number of different agencies? Does that send a message that we're going to shrink this? And so if you are doing any shenanigans, there's going to be more oversight because there are fewer of you?
Well, I absolutely believe that in the future it will. I think if they show that, back in the day when there were snake oil salesmen, or even now, if you have, since we're talking about the Ozempic example, let's say you have a doctor that's telling people that if he gives them this injection, it'll cure their cancer, but it's an actual lie, and it kills a lot of people because they didn't get the other treatment, right? Once you show that doctor going to jail for the rest of his life, it's going to deter other evil people with medical degrees that might do the same thing. And I think in this case, the more that they can publicly show, this is where I do agree with the public show, is they can show that there is no two-tier justice system, that they are going to start going after people in government that use their official position to do things against them. I think that will make a big difference in the future.
Jonathan, real quick, I just want to ask one little quick thing. You served for a long time, both in the military, Navy SEAL, the FBI. What is the legacy of the Comey era of the FBI and our justice system?
It's a disaster. But I'll tell you, it didn't start with Comey. I believe it started with Mueller, because Mueller is the one that brought in the new dialogue in 2008 and actually said, we are going to change the FBI from the premier law enforcement to the premier domestic intelligence agency. They told us that in training, and I believe that's what they did. And they used that intelligence to go after politicians and leaders and people that they don't like.
Wow. Yeah. Powerful.
I think you're right, though. You make them walk the plank, and other people are going to think twice before they do it again. Jonathan Gilliam.
Let me say this one other thing. The thing about Comey that really goes against him, nobody liked Mueller. And when Comey came in, everybody thought he was the savior for the Bureau. And it turns out he's as far left as you can go, and just as evil as anyone else who's ever been in that position.
Yeah, he was the Eagle Scout, remember? Everybody thought he was just an old shucks Eagle Scout.
Calling.
Jonathan Gilliam, former FBI agent, Navy SEAL, Air Marshal, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Up next, we're going to examine why so many of these IRS investigations seem to be getting shut down, or they did at one time. We'll be back on the other side.
Hey, America, the digital dollar is coming, and it's moving faster than most Americans realize. Right now, 134 countries covering 98% of global GDP are developing programmable digital currencies. These aren't just new forms of money. They're built to track everything you do and control how you spend it. China already has 260 million people using their version, which can expire if it's not spent in time. This isn't innovation. It's the end of financial privacy. According to the Bank for International Settlements, these digital currencies will allow governments to monitor every single transaction in real time, and the IMF has confirmed they can be programmed to limit what people can buy and how their money's used. That's why our friends at American Alternative Assets created an urgent new guide. It's called The Digital Dollar Trap: How CBDCs Threaten Your Financial Freedom. It lays out 7 ways these currencies could strip away your freedom and explains why precious metals may be your best choice to opt out before it's too late. Call 855-GOLD-340 or visit johnlikesgold.com to get your free guide. That's 855-465-3340 or visit my site, johnlikesgold.com. Now protect your money before surveillance becomes total and escape is no longer an option.